So Ben Roth, Jackson, Wyoming. It turns out I was already familiar with Ben's work. I just didn't know it was Ben. Just from kind of being around town, you notice things. And there is public art here, and he's participated in a lot of that. But ultimately, I have a friendly acquaintance in Travis Walker. He is an artist from Teton Valley, or he lives in Teton Valley now. And when we were talking through who I was going to interview for this podcast, he's like, Ben Roth. And that's when I was like, who's that? And so then he started telling me all the stuff Ben has done in the community. And I realized, wait a second, I've seen that guy's work. But then too, it's not just public installations, it's stuff in a bank, the sculptures he does, and 2D art. And so he's kind of peppered around the community. And his work is varied enough that you don't know it's always him. Because he doesn't limit himself to just metal sculpture. I think I mentioned on this episode that he has an installation outside of the Center for Performing Arts in Jackson, and it's wood. So I've noticed too with Ben's work, he also designs furniture, and he likes to mix wood and metal. And I think the wood part has something to do with his love of nature. He's always kind of handling wood. He's not necessarily, I wouldn't call him a woodworker though. Like, he's still an artist, but with that furniture building, really practical approaches to making sure the furniture is safe and comfortable. And so he is applying very practical skills. And the welding that is required of his metal work, he's got to be safe doing that. But I can see Ben kind of getting into the flow, you know, with everything he chooses. And I love that it's a mixed bag. He really impresses me that way. And some of his woodcuts are more approachable in price. So if you want to collect Ben's work, just go to his site and kind of look at his woodcut offerings. In his lifetime, he has been jack of all trades. You know, Ben does have a formal education, but not in art. It's in hospitality. He was a partner in a restaurant here in Jackson, was quite popular. But we do address the fact that, you know, building that restaurant, Ben was introduced to welding and couldn't stop. And so that's to the benefit of all the people that, you know, hire him to do commissions, to, you know, artfully decorate their homes. They have these beautiful kind of metal installations, stainless steel mostly. And so I don't know, I would love to see something that's in someone's house. And you know, the thing about public art, yeah, we all are exposed to it, but these lucky people, they get to keep Ben's work to themselves and show it to their friends. It's so special. Hey, Ben.
Hey, how's it going, Jen?
It's going all right.
Good.
It's going all right. This is a great way to meet somebody.
Yeah, totally.
Invite them to be on a podcast when you don't even know them.
And share a mic.
Yeah, right. You're right. All right. Well, I just want to let the audience know that today we're talking to Ben Roth. And Ben is, according to Ben, a student, a traveler, an adventurer, a restaurateur, and an artist. He's done all of these things. But he says, in art, I found my path.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Tell me what that means to you, Ben, because you have done so much. And do you feel like you fell into art?
Yeah. Well, I always enjoyed doing it. I never thought you could make a living at it. It kept showing up in my life as opportunities to make art. So I always took advantage of those opportunities when they happened, but tried to be like practical about a career. And it just kind of kept showing up. And eventually I had an opportunity to explore art. And I thought, well, might as well. I don't have a family to feed. I live in this great place, and this community supports the arts. I should give it a go.
Right. And Ben is referring to Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I've been here about 26 years.
Wow.
And I switched over to art full time about 22 years ago.
Fascinating. Okay. And so in Jackson, you have the opportunity to not only do public art, but you're getting a lot of commissions for people that have the kind of means and like the environment for you to install art into their homes.
Yeah, some in Jackson, some in other places. Kind of medium scale work has been happening the last several years. It used to be a lot of metal work for like new construction when I first started doing this. And now it's mostly sculpture or custom furniture. And yeah, this economy in Jackson supports that.
Certainly.
However, I also like doing woodblock prints, and those are affordable, approachable art. And it's nice to work with that community as well.
Right. And so you just kind of laid down for us that you work in mixed media. Like you're not honed in on one medium or kind of presentation, but you're doing 3D, 2D.
Yeah. 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 So like with the term mixed media, oftentimes that suggests lots of different mediums on a single piece.
Certainly.
And sometimes I do that, but I try to keep my materials reasonable variety of things, not too complicated. But I do work in lots of different materials, from steel to wood to glass, found objects, organic material.
What's your favorite?
Just for like holding the material, I really like how bronze feels, but I also really like picking up pieces of wood and playing with wood and carving wood. So I don't think I can say there's a favorite. I mean, like spreading white plaster on a black background and then carving through it is also a really wonderful way to create contrast. And like last week, I just learned how to do a silver point drawing. Silver point is basically using a little wire of sterling silver and drawing on paper that's been treated with a little, I think it's painted white, and I think it was acrylic, like an acrylic base. And that was really delightful. Like it's a silver line that gradually oxidizes and changes color. So I obviously can't say I have a favorite material because I keep finding new ones and like going back.
I would love to see that
happen,
like to witness the process of that.
It's visually underwhelming. Like it looks like you're just sketching. The color change happens gradually. Okay. And I don't do a lot of drawing. I draw periodically. I draw a lot for like proposals and things like that. But I think I've got a couple of drawings in mind since I took that class. That was with Jeremy Morgan. He's an art teacher who travels around and super wise. And I just finally got to meet him and sat in on a drawing class one evening last week.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's nice to find new material and meet new people in the field.
Right. You had mentioned just a moment ago that you were making a living and trying to be practical. Can you tell me what you mean by that?
Oh, like before I got into art.
Yes.
Well, my parents raised me to like be self-supportive and to like go to school and get good grades, and get a job.
Right.
And so that's what I meant about being practical.
Right. And do you think that during the time that you were trying to be responsible, which is commendable, I feel it, you were suppressing your creativity?
I mean, I wasn't fully exploring it, but I was getting to apply it, in the jobs that I had after college. But before I pursued the arts, I did have opportunities to be creative in the process. You kind of have to use whatever tools you have in your tool bag, and creatively thinking or coming about things in different ways, one of my skills. So I did that when I first moved to town and was managing a corporate retreat, and then in the building of the restaurant and designing the restaurant. But then once I started the restaurant, when it was time to be like the career restaurateur, I definitely balked and wasn't as good at it as I thought I was going to be. And I found it exhausting.
Right.
And so after a few years of that, I got to switch.
But I do understand that while you were building your restaurant, you discovered welding.
Yeah.
Right.
That's how I found out about metal. I'd made a lot of art before that, but I hadn't fabricated with metal before. And cutting up metal and welding it back together is very pleasurable. I mean, it's amazing how it works. And it came really naturally. I was like, wow, this is neat material, neat process. I'd love to do more of this. So even while the restaurant was up and running, I had access to a metal shop. And so I would go down and build things while I was supposed to be running the restaurant.
Right. And do you think, I got to start asking the questions now, do you think that had anything to do with what you were like as a kid? Enjoying that metal and saying, wow, this is really fulfilling for me. And you were at play.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I've always done that. I've always found objects and made things out of them. Like, ever since I was a kid, I was building things three-dimensionally and making things out of wood and building skateboard half pipes with my friends, making skimboards and making racetracks out of construction paper and things like that. Right. So definitely I had a lot of energy as a kid, as you can imagine. And didn't have the internet or screens. So I was making things. And that's obviously has stayed with me and happens all the time. And
isn't it a joy to know that our generation was unencumbered?
Yeah, less encumbered. I mean, we had video games and we had TV.
Sure. But I've said before that television was my babysitter many times over.
Yeah.
But no social media.
Right.
And if you want to occupy your time, your parents are like, go draw something.
Yeah.
Go outside and play. You know?
Yeah. One thing that I worry about is when we were in that situation and you were bored, you had to use a certain part of your brain, your creativity, to fix that boredom.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that part of the brain is being stimulated like it was when we were kids.
Right.
But I still am meeting young people who are incredibly creative. So they're getting their stimuli in some way.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm glad we all can run into people that are younger than ourselves that are still giving us hope.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That creativity does live. And, you know, the premise of this podcast is to kind of, we hope that we land a message with the audience that says, yes, you're an adult. Yes, you have a career. You might be an accountant, but didn't you love to hook a rug as a kid?
Right.
You know, and what part of your brain is craving that now? And why not allow it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have lots of friends who are artists. Most of them don't even consider themselves artists.
Right.
Because they're not like selling their work or they're not doing it full time, but they've got like this thriving art practice where they're making interesting things. And one of the nice things about the internet, you go to YouTube, if you want to explore anything, you can look up a 5-minute video on how to get started.
That's right.
And then dive in and try stuff.
I mean, truly YouTube, when used properly in many ways, can be such a great learning channel.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a stick in the mud. I was like YouTube schmootube, but now I'm like, I have to learn something, YouTube, you know? And so that's always so helpful to have those kind of aids. And, you know, that's one of the other things that we're trying to discover here is like how to realize that your creativity does not have to be monetized. I mean, you just kind of mentioned your friends. I don't really consider myself an artist because I'm not selling anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of sad because creating for the sake of creating matters. It's so important.
You're an artist. As you start making stuff, you're an artist in my book.
I think we're all artists. I think it was buried because the child's intuitive sense of creativity, it just comes so naturally and there's no questioning why.
Yeah.
You know, you just follow the impulse.
Yeah.
And we should all be following that impulse a little bit more. Yeah.
Well, it's something I have to always be tapping into in my job is exploring, being inquisitive and trying things out and failing and trying not to be affected by the world around me and people's perceptions. It's tricky in the real world to just go forward with reckless abandon in your art making. But it's something you work at and you have these little successes along the way.
And do you have an opinion about the word perfectionism?
Yeah, I don't really put a ton of value in being a perfectionist.
Listen, people.
I have had people tell me, oh, you're fixating on some part of your art too much. It doesn't need to be perfect. But I don't consider my art making technique as perfectionism. I do want some precision when I'm making furniture. Like I want things to be accurate, proportional, and comfortable and safe. But you can find flaws in all my work. Definitely. Everything I build, there are flaws. Yeah.
All right. And I do have a quote from Henry Moore.
Okay.
The sculptor is a person who is interested in the shape of things, a poet in words, a musician by sounds. Sculpture is an art of the open air. Daylight, sunlight is necessary to it. And for me, its best setting and complement is nature.
Right on.
And you've said many times over that nature is your biggest inspiration.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so were you playing outside as a kid? Were you in an environment where you were just outside and reckless abandon outside?
Yeah, definitely free range kid in Littleton, Colorado. Lots of looking for and occasionally catching snakes and frogs and fishing in ponds along golf courses and things like that.
Really
and
nice.
Biking out to Chatfield Dam. We had a couple decent bike paths way back then. And yeah, fun neighborhood of kids to hang out with and play with. And yeah, creative play.
Yeah.
Yeah, making things up.
Right. And that, yeah, I love that. I love to think about now, especially as I'm middle-aged.
You and me both. You and me both, Jen.
Right. What I found pleasurable as a child and how to bring that back into my life. I think that as you get older, you kind of reflect on the word happiness and what that means to you. And sometimes it doesn't, exploring that word and applying it to your adult life and thinking to yourself, how could I possibly be happy right now? I'm struggling.
Right. Things are hard.
I have relationship problems. I mean, there's so many things that come into that surround your periphery that can really distract you, and it creates anxiety and insecurity. And I think when we all need to give ourselves a chance to reflect on what we were like as kids, because that is the first version of ourselves.
Yeah.
And it lays a blueprint.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's still inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no reason why we can't dig deep and say, maybe my happiness is way down in there, and I'm not giving it a chance to rise up.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully you have memories of that time period that you can tap into.
Oh man.
Some have more than others, you gotta admit.
Yeah, for sure.
Some people's childhood wasn't blissful.
Exactly.
I think happiness is trickier as you get older too.
Absolutely.
I mean, when you're a kid, the rest of the world kind of falls away from you, and you don't have those other concerns. Or if you're lucky, like I was, you can be immersed in your creativity,
you can
without
let yourself
any
get
sweat.
lost.
Yeah. And I think at this point, for adults and even for me, it requires some effort to get there. Like I'm pretty psyched coming to work every day. Like when I get up, I'm psyched to come in here, and that helps a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm very thankful for that. But sometimes I'm distracted by other things, or I'm worried about world affairs or the environment or family stuff or whatever. And you have to like compartmentalize that and get into your creative mode. And you may call it your childlike mode, but I don't really think of it like that on a regular basis. I mean, sometimes I definitely go back into my distant memory as I'm exploring an idea, but it's more just like getting in a mental space where you can be focused, not distracted, and open to what you come up with, or try things and explore. And in that, when you're in the right mind setting, those interesting things come up.
Right.
If you're lucky.
Certainly.
And all you can do is set up your situation and hope for the best.
But also,
be patient.
But the kind of art you do, I'm sure that you find yourself kind of doing it freely and impulsively at times, but a lot of the stuff you're doing cannot be impulsive, because you're designing furniture that has to be, like you just said, safe.
Yeah.
Four legs need to work on the chair.
Totally.
And then, for instance, you've just done this massive aspen tree installation that you kind of showed me. And that's got to be a little bit of engineering. You can't just like...
Yeah, you definitely have to wear different hats or hire people. Yeah. I mean, those are your options. Right. You collaborate with someone who's an expert on something you're not, or be practical at times. I mean, I also have to be an adult when I'm dealing with my clients.
Yes.
I need to instill confidence in them.
That's right.
That I can create this piece and execute it, and that it's going to be good. So yeah, you kind of have to bounce around. And I think it takes a concerted effort. I think meditation probably helps.
Yeah.
Getting a good night's sleep really helps. Just makes everything run a little smoother.
Yeah, I'm definitely a big fan of meditation. What that has aided me in clearing my mind without going into meditation. I think if you do meditation enough, you're able, in your kind of active, times when you're not sitting down on a cushion or whatever, to clear it. It develops a habit.
Yeah,
where you're able to just clear your headspace.
Yeah.
And set everything aside and give the stuff that needs attention room.
Yeah.
And I think.
And you get better at that with practice.
Yeah, it does take practice, just like art.
Totally.
Everything takes practice.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. Okay, back to the Henry Moore quote. On some of your outdoor installations, God, I looked at something this morning and I loved the reflective light off the metal. But you're also, it's not just like Ben Roth does not put metal objects into public space and it's like, here's a shiny silver thing.
I have.
I've seen that. But there's also color.
Yeah.
And what are you using to paint the metal? Like, are you?
Well, sometimes it's spray paint, sometimes it's powder coat, sometimes it's auto body paint. Really, what's important is the metal underneath it,
right,
on how it holds up, and that's usually stainless steel or bronze.
Gotcha.
Some of my large scale painted pieces will have to get painted again at some point.
Right.
My oldest piece is probably 6 years old, and the color still looks really good on it. But UV light breaks down everything eventually,
right.
So those colors will fade. And
sure.
we'll have to get painted again. This aspen project I'm making right now is an indoor piece, and on the north facing side of the house. So I think that color will hold indefinitely.
All right, because it won't be so exposed to light.
Yeah, this harsh climate.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I like natural metal. I like metal that rusts over time, or bronze that patinas over time, or even stainless that gets dulled down over time, sandblasted in nature. Yeah, there's all kinds of great finishes out there.
Right, and then nature kind of aids in the building the character. Right?
Oftentimes, yeah. I have this cast iron piece. It's an aerial view of bison traveling over land, and I did it as a sand cast. And I left it outside for a few years, and it looked really great. But at the time, I didn't see it. I just saw it as like rusted, and somebody was interested in buying it. So I brought it in and buffed it out and cleaned it all up, and then showed it to them. They're like, it was so much better before you painted it up. And then they didn't want it. So yeah, it looked too refined after I cleaned it up.
Oh man.
So yeah, there's all types of finishes and happy accidents that happen. And yeah, and it's cool. And like my environmental sculptures definitely change a lot over time. Usually gray out or begin to rot, or show marks of water or snow.
Right, and you do temporary sculptures too. I saw one on your site that was outside of the Center for the Arts.
Well,
it was like the crosscut logs grouped together.
Oh yeah, that's still there. It comes down this summer, and it's this lens shape coming up in the courtyard. It's been up a few years, and I have to take it down this summer. Someone was asking what I was going to do with the wood, and I would love to chop it up and give it away for firewood, but it may be rotted. And if it's rotted, then it's got to go and get composted.
Right. Now back to your childhood in Littleton. Did you have any siblings growing up?
Yep, I have a sister. She's 3 years older than me, and did a lot of art making when she was a kid. We made a lot of art together as kids, and now she pursues other creative things and is a great friend.
Aw.
Yeah. Very confident.
I think that I have one sibling too, so it was a 2-kid family, and my sister and I spent hours just exploring our imaginations, and we're just let to do that, I mean, a kid's sense of time is endless, and you can be in a room playing with your Tinker toys for so long and not even know it.
Yeah.
And that is the dream. Like, I love to lose time when I'm writing, and that's because I'm in flow.
Yeah, that flow experience is easy when you're a kid, and it's attainable as an adult with a little practice.
But exactly, practice.
Got to work at it,
and just kind of developing habits.
Yeah. Putting in the time.
Right, and when you're in flow, what's your sweet spot? Like, is it the fact that you are losing time and you don't keep track of time, and you raise your head and you're like, wow, what a great experience. I wasn't thinking about anything but was right in front of me.
Well, I like it when I put my head down and work for half the day and then see how much I've created. Like all of a sudden you're like hungry. You're like, oh, it's time to eat.
Right.
And then you look at where you were when you walked in the shop versus where you are now. And you're like, oh, I made some progress.
Hey,
I made a whole bunch of branches, or
nice.
I welded all these spoons together. And a lot of my work is very labor intensive, and you just have to put in the time.
I mean,
and I will also say sometimes I'm listening to like a podcast or a basketball game and being very adult-like while I'm doing my work.
I do like to ask artists what they listen to when they work. Do you listen to music?
I listen to music. I listen to NPR, probably more than I should.
Right. Yeah. And then sometimes that stuff drowns out,
Oh yeah,
like
I'm not hearing it a lot.
I almost think too that I do listen to music in the background, and then I don't hear it. but I know it's there and it's helping me in some way.
Yeah.
So it should be going.
However, sometimes I'll come in and just need silence. Some days I'll come in, especially on a weekend, because this whole area is really quiet on the weekends.
Nice.
And I'll sometimes not turn on the radio and work in silence. And that is a nice break too. It's kind of like having tea in the morning instead of coffee.
Yeah.
Switch it up a little.
I hear what you're saying.
But I also like hearing my neighbors working and the traffic going by and stuff during the week as well.
Sure. So let's talk about what's behind this.
Oh, yeah. Some examples of my work.
Yeah.
Nothing new. Well, actually, the wire guy is kind of new. Yeah, I work in 2D and 3D. And several years ago, I was liking working with plaster. And this piece was made in 2010, so it's quite old. And I ended up selling this idea to Mikey Franco, or this design for his snowboard, Franco Snow Shapes.
Nice.
This was his first logo he used for a custom snowboard company.
And so did you lay plaster down and then scrape it away? Is that what you did?
I taped it down. I taped off the board. The backboard is MDF board. I painted it black. And then I put down the tape. And then I laid the plaster and then I pulled the tape.
Okay.
And it's aged okay, but our method of taking money has changed. Like, this was a barcode, turns into a forest, kind of this dialogue. It's still a barcode, but now they're QR codes.
Right.
So
yes.
It's not quite, doesn't apply quite as much, but it's this idea of consumerism versus nature.
I'm loving it.
Thanks.
And let's talk about the otter and the fish.
Oh yeah. So a lot of times when I'm proposing an idea, I like my furniture pieces I can draw on a computer, but my sculptures I don't generally draw on a computer.
Are you using AutoCAD?
I use Rhino, which is a 3D design software.
Gotcha.
So for furniture, it just lends itself.
Sure.
But sculpture, because of organic shapes, ends up being more time consuming to try to recreate on the computer. So a lot of times I'll just build it and I'll learn a bunch while I'm building it too. Like if I end up getting the job, this prototype's super handy.
Right.
In this instance, I didn't get the job. So this otter will just sit around till I can propose it to somebody else. But this is another material I really like to work with. Yeah. It's a screen. And this one is stainless steel screen.
Look at his whiskers.
I also use mild steel screen. And the reason I started using screen is because I like sculpting by hand. And I also like working with metal. And you can't usually sculpt with metal by hand. You need tools, unless it's screen. So you can form it with your hands. I'm not pulling this over a mold. I'm not heating it up. I'm just manipulating it into shapes. And then I do weld the seams.
And so is this a skeleton of what's underneath one of your sculptures and you're layering something else on top of it? Or
no, I generally is the final piece.
Oh.
And sometimes I paint them. Sometimes I rust them.
Okay.
And obviously they don't lend them. The material doesn't lend itself to certain animals. Like I tried to do an orangutan one time and it did not look right at all because they're such funny furry creatures.
Right.
But like I've done lots of fish and sharks and whales and sleeker creatures with the material. Sure. I also made a couple of trumpeter swans that are at Bank of Jackson Hole.
Yeah, I saw that.
And that's made out of screen. That's painted.
Those are wonderful.
And a lot of people don't understand what that material is when they see it.
Right.
It's kind of nice because it's slightly transparent, and you also get this nice moire effect, this visual effect when you've got this perforated, 2 layers of perforated material traveling in opposite directions, like as it's moving.
I see.
You end up with this nice kind of dappled effect. Visually is quite nice.
From everything you're saying, I gotta say, I think metal. You just mentioned a sculpture with spoons.
Yeah.
You've done a bison made out of bicycle chain.
Yep.
Love it.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was a fun piece. I was psyched how that one turned out.
And was that found object, or did you actually rust that chain?
Well, I collected chains from bike shops.
Gotcha.
So, there's this new bike revolution that's been going on for several years. One of the aspects of it is in the effort to make bikes lighter, a lot of the hardware doesn't last as long, and bike chains stretch. Okay. And if you don't replace them regularly, it starts affecting your chain ring, and that's more expensive to replace than your chain. So people are swapping out chains a lot more than they used to. So I'll drop off some buckets at some bike shops and be like, throw the chains in buckets for me. And then I have to clean them and sometimes rust them or blacken them. Like the bison skull, I use the silvery chains for the skull. And then I used some older chains for the horns. And then I used this chemical called Presto Black or Gun Blue, which is acid, and it reacts with steel and turns it black.
Mm. All right, let's go back to like the prior incarnation of yourself. As you know, all of us have many different versions of ourselves as we grow up, but you were a restaurateur at one point.
Yep.
And you and I spoke briefly about the culinary arts.
Yep.
On this podcast, we also intend to interview chefs because I do consider the culinary pursuit an art of some kind.
Absolutely.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're creating something out of raw ingredients or raw materials, you're definitely being an artist in my book, and working with ingredients to create food or things to create pastries. That is a creative pursuit. Absolutely. Right. And the other neat thing about it is you're bringing in another sense that the rest of us aren't using in our art making, of taste. You know, like I'm definitely thinking about how things look and feel and maybe sound, but they've got a whole nother realm that they can explore.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. It really just made me think of like eating as an immersive experience.
Oh, the best. As funny as growing up, I was never really into eating. I always thought it was just like a waste of my time and distracting from the other things I was pursuing. Mm-hmm. And then when I went into the restaurant business, I really fell in love with food and the people who make it. I am not a chef.
Well, you let me know that you can at least prep a meal.
Yeah, I'm pretty good with a knife. Okay. I can chop things. I can open the wine and keep the glasses full. Things like that.
Well, that matters.
Yeah, and I'm great at cleanup. I like to earn my keep, so I do the dishes.
And that plated thing, right? I mean, that's also part of the fact that a culinary experience is a temporary art experience.
Oh, yeah.
And how it looks on the plate. Man,
that's it.
I love to cook. I love to take pictures of what I cook.
Yeah.
I know that certain things shoot really poorly.
Yeah.
Biscuits and gravy
don't look great. No, not worth posting.
But I mean, fresh vegetables and any kind of produce and fruit and, grilled cheese sandwiches.
Oh, yeah. Good comfort food. That looks nice, too.
I actually realized the other day, like it finally occurred to me. I don't even know why this has not landed until now. But I write all day, most of the time. And I just realized that I sometimes get up and cook something just to be fed by that. And I'm not even talking about eating.
The act of
prepping, the actual execution, and then plating it. And I come back to that desk fresh.
Yeah, yeah. You got to have those techniques to clear your head, whether it's walking around the block or going to skate park or whatever.
Right. I really actually just read something about walking and how it has fed us since since humans could stand.
Yeah.
And it really has to do with our nomadic roots. And that getting walking into your life or movement, the human spirit craves it. Oh, yeah. Your brain and your spirit want to see movement. And it's all because we were hunters and gatherers, and that's all we ever did. Walk.
For a lot longer than we've been domesticated.
Absolutely. Yeah, domesticated. Because, we were all feral at one point.
I'd like to think so at some point. And some of us are still a little bit.
And you lived in Vegas for a time.
That's when I went to school.
Right.
Out of high school. I went there for a hospitality school. Didn't really fit in Vegas. Wasn't really my scene exactly. But I got into rock climbing while I was there. And the rock climbing there is excellent. So I kind of found my people that way.
Right.
But a lot of the people I was going to school with were there to pursue a career in Las Vegas. And I wasn't. So I was there to.
And did that hospitality degree land you here in Jackson?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I was working at a job in Vegas and not really liking it. And I had some family friends move to Jackson. They're like, oh, you got to move to Jackson. And I said, well, find me a job. And they called me a week later and they're like, we found you a job.
Fantastic.
So I came here and interviewed for the job and then moved out for the job a few months later. And after about a week, I was like, oh, yeah, this is where
sold.
Yeah. Well, and I have a longer history with the Valley. My folks met here in Jackson in the 60s. And we all would come up here in the summertime.
Oh, okay. So you're familiar with the community a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen it change over the last 40, 50 years.
It's been kind of cuckoo that way.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. That's a whole nother that's a whole nother podcast.
That's a different podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if someone were to come to Jackson, where would they see your work? Your work is all over town.
It's kind of scattered about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have it really well organized on how to find it all. I keep talking about during summer art fair doing a scavenger hunt of my work and then giving away a piece of art to whoever.
I'm not going to let you off the hook on that. You're doing it.
I might have to do that one. But let's see. I've got some newer work at the Cloudvale Hotel in the lobby there. Got some skulls in there.
I've seen that. Is there a skull behind the desk? Is that
just to the right of the desk is one that I did, and there's also one over the fireplace. The one next to the desk is an elk skull.
Lovely.
And the one over the fireplace is a bison skull.
Okay.
And then out by the pool there is a moose skull.
Gotcha.
If you want to see the one by the pool, you have to ask somebody from the front desk to let you into the pool area because it's locked.
What a shame.
And I have a lot of work up at Suda Restaurant. They bought a few pieces, and I've also loaned them a few pieces. And Suda is near the square. And it's a great Asian fusion restaurant. Or I guess it's called an izakaya style restaurant, which is like Japanese bar food is sort of the original concept. But full-on sushi bar.
Thanks for
great place. Yeah, it's really good, actually. I really like it. So I've got kind of work scattered all around that place. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of just have to look around. Like in some of the parks, there'll be a piece, or I've made a lot of bike racks. I've got bike racks at the Wildlife Museum and at the R Park. And made some wine racks for some different restaurants.
Wow.
It's kind of nice still dabbling in the restaurant business and the hotel business through my art making.
Right.
Since I was kind of in that world when I moved here, people associate me a little bit with that. Or if they're opening a new restaurant or they've got a wall that's open in a hotel, sometimes they come to me. And so that's fun to still, I like that. I like the hospitality world.
It's crazy busy.
I am busy. Not too bad. I struggle to have balance for sure. I mean, I just work 28 days in a row and I've got to work 4 more days and then I got to take a couple days off. So yeah,
right.
I guess I'm busy.
And for me, since I ditched the corporate life, I have abandoned weekends.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, it's Tuesday and I get to have a break. And then I go play somewhere or do something that I enjoy, or, take a 2-hour nap.
Yeah, because you can.
Because you can is exactly right.
Yeah. I try to do that, but I tend to just work through the weekend. And I try to take off a day during the week, but that doesn't always happen.
Weekends a lot.
I enjoy working weekends here because, like I was saying earlier, it's quiet.
It's quiet, yeah.
Spot.
Right. And I don't want the audience to think that Ben's work is siloed in Jackson because you have work around the Rocky Mountain West. Can you tell us about some other places where your work can be seen?
I don't know about permanent pieces. I make a lot of art for Vail, Colorado.
I see.
And I do have some permanent pieces indoors there at the visitor center. They've got a couple of my pieces, a fireplace screen and an elk mount on the wall at the visitor center. And I've done some installation pieces for Vail and in Breckenridge and Green Mountain Falls. Mm-hmm. But I don't think anything is currently up. This summer I had a daddy longlegs set up near Breckenridge, big, giant spider. He was about 24 feet across and about 16 feet tall.
Love it.
And he was up for like a couple months.
Oh, that reminds me of Louise Bourgeois.
Oh, yeah. She made her spiders look different than my daddy longlegs. Powerful, yes. Quite.
What a commentary.
Yeah. Tortured almost. Yeah.
And she was?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Amazing sculptures.
Right.
Yeah, the daddy longlegs. There's an example of one on the wall right there.
Gosh, there's a lot of stuff over there. I wasn't even looking over there.
Did you see it? Did you see it though?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a prototype. And I was thinking that this morning when I knew we were going to be meeting up on how I've come up with ideas for things, and it's just observing, just being your eyes open and looking at nature and noticing things that are interesting. Like I watched the daddy longleg walk across a white surface with this wonderful shadow. Aww. And I was just like, wow, that is incredible. Like right. that the fact that this creature exists and moves in that way is incredible. And then explored that.
I love that you say that, because back to like for the average person who isn't creating, some of that starts in noticing.
You what?
Some of it starts in noticing.
Oh, yeah.
Giving yourself the room to notice. And I think that we take our surroundings for granted the older we get.
Yep.
And we're not necessarily paying attention to the daddy long legs, Ben.
No. And for some people it comes naturally, and for some people you like need to make a concerted effort, like maybe start a sketchbook and look for things to draw.
I love that idea.
The other thing that I noticed the other day was a piece of down feather, like a fluff of down is an amazing shape, and you set it on a white surface and you shine a light on it, and the shadow it creates is quite amazing. And then you blow on it and you watch it tumble and watch the shadow that it creates. It's amazing.
Right.
And it weighs nothing, but it's an incredible little.
But it's got this kinetic kind of energy, even though it's so light. And
it's amazing.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things I'd notice and then explore.
Right.
And I think I was mentioning the silver point drawing before.
Yeah.
A couple of drawings I think I want to try with that technique is some fluffs of down. And I also have this great shell called Spiny Murex, which is this crazy looking shell. And those are a couple of drawings. So now that I've got this project finished, I got it like a couple of weeks before I got to get started on the next one. So I think I might explore those drawings just because they're on my mind.
Right.
And they need to be explored. Well, I don't need to, but I want to.
Well, I love that you had the opportunity to grow up in Colorado, because that puts nature in your face.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, and Colorado is so varied in how nature presents itself, right? And it's a massive state. I used to live in Fort Collins, but if you drive down to Colorado Springs, different.
Totally.
You know, but you've been here for 26 years. And I do like to tell people if they want to come visit me. I live over the pass from Ben in Teton Valley, Idaho. I can't think of a better place to live if you love nature. There are so many places in the world, but accessible to me and to others is this area. And what do you do now? You still climb?
I haven't been climbing since we lost our climbing gym.
Oh, we lost the gym?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, several years ago now, but we're building a new one. They're building a new one.
Came back, so things are different, but good news.
They're
building a new one.
They're the rec center's building the climbing gym. And so maybe I will again.
Right.
I don't like doing it unless I'm in shape for it. So, and it is somewhat time consuming, and you kind of have to drive a lot for climbing, living around here. Right. But I have dear friends who I love hanging out with, go climbing with. So yeah. Probably.
Yeah, that's always fun. I love that people bond over that kind of stuff. You know?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the activities I like doing in this valley, I do them as much for the people I get to hang out with as the activity itself.
Right. And so besides climbing, biking, walking, you already stated?
Yeah, I like to hike. I've done a lot of trail running, but I had a hip replaced last year, so I don't know if I get to run anymore. Might just be fast hiking from here on out. We'll see. I like to fish. I like to ski.
Nice.
I like to bike commute.
You're taking advantage of a lot of the stuff that is available here. Like
the affordable stuff. Yeah. Well, you know, being an artist, I haven't made a lot of money for a lot of the time I've been an artist. And Jackson, if you've got your housing covered, there's lots of things you can do here that don't cost much money.
True. And
so hiking, running. I also love the bike commute. I wish I could do it all year round. I wish I was tough enough to do it in the winter. But about 6 months out of the year, I bike to and from work. And that is just a great way to start the day and end the day.
Lovely.
If you can have that in your life, I strongly recommend it.
Yeah.
My mindset is so different when I walk into the studio when I biked here versus having driven.
Right.
And at the end of the day, when I go home, if I bike home versus drive home, when I get home, I'm in a different state.
Yeah, it's all about that movement and being in fresh air.
Yeah.
You know, taking in your surroundings and just like completely enjoying it.
Well, you kind of have to be aware around here. The bike paths have gotten crowded, and lots of fast e-bikes, so you gotta kind of have to be on it. I wear a helmet now.
Absolutely.
But it's great. You kind of get your exercise covered, and one less car on the road, and minimizing my carbon footprint.
Right.
I definitely think a lot about my impact on the world and my art making's effect on the world, and the waste material I make, and the life cycle of the materials I deal with are often part of my practice.
Right. And so do you have any new exciting projects coming up for 2023, Ben, that you can tell us about?
Well, I might be making a giant flower this summer, but that's not confirmed.
Gotcha.
And it might even be in town, so everyone might get to see it. I've made these big flowers that end up at private residence, so people don't get to see them, or not. Sometimes I'll show them for a little while and then they go away. And this one, if it happens, it'll be in town for public consumption, which is cool.
Good.
I've got a couple of smaller commissions for private people that don't live in Jackson, that live in other states, that I'll be making this summer and fall. and I've got a meeting next week about an entry to a development. So it might be like a gate or an entry sculpture.
And do you
I don't know the details.
Excuse me. Do you like the collaborative process of a commission? You enjoy that?
I do. Yeah. I like working with other artists to execute it. And I have had almost no negative experiences with like a client relationship making a piece.
That's great news.
Yeah. A lot of artists shy away from that kind of work, and I've heard nightmare stories, and I've had a couple jobs go rough where you have to kind of eat it, take it in the shorts to get it right. But mostly it's gone well, and I do enjoy it.
Good.
I like the relationship with a client.
Right. And that's something that you have going on all the time. It seems to me that you've got commissions kind of in the hopper.
Yeah. I usually have them 3 to 6 months out.
Anything in Colorado this year you can tell us about? Yeah.
I don't think so. No.
Not yet.
No, I did. I got to collaborate with some ice carvers in Vail over the holidays, and I got to kind of design the piece from Jackson, and then they executed it in Vail and lit them up really well, and that was a really fun collaboration.
It's so cool.
That was really
I just love that.
But I didn't get to see them in person. I was busy on this project, and the timing didn't work with me being down there over the holidays, so I never got to see them in person. And that's kind of wild to make a piece of art that's temporary remotely.
And you handed it off.
Yeah, and I got to know these guys that were building it, and the people in Vail who I've worked with a lot. It was a fun interaction.
It's so cool.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
All right, tell the audience what your website is. They can dig in.
It's a Ben Roth design. And I probably have more images up there than some people would recommend, but I tried to thin it out. And it shows two-dimensional art like woodblock prints and some sketches, sculptures of a variety of mediums, and furniture, and maybe, I don't know exactly, maybe public art might be combined. But it works on your phone or your computer, and you can contact me through that. And my work shows up first on Instagram, like when I'm building something, or if I make a woodblock print. Like woodblock prints are limited edition, so sometimes they sell out.
Right.
And so if you want one of those, you watch for it on Instagram. I don't post a lot, about once a month, but that's where the work shows up first. And my handle on Instagram is Rothinator.
Rothinator?
Rothinator, like the Terminator.
Right.
My friend Audrey came up with that name.
And then for the audience too, look at the show notes all the time, because we like to shout out, the artist's contact information, at least their website.
Cool. And
a little bit about Ben and a bio.
Sure.
And this has been so fun.
Yeah, it was great chatting with you and getting to know you, Jenn. Thanks for being interested in what I'm doing.
Absolutely. I was actually referred to by an artist in Teton Valley, and had never heard of you.
Oh, great. But
he was so praiseworthy. He's just like so praiseful of your work. And then I started checking out, and I'm like, how come I don't know this guy? What is happening? I've been to the Wildlife Museum. I've seen your bike racks. I just didn't know it was you. So, yeah. So now I do. And I think I'm just going to keep my eyes open a little bit more, because I want to notice those things. Yeah, I definitely focus on making the work more than promoting it or myself. So you kind of have to just keep your eye out for it. Well, it sounds to me like you're selling yourself fine just from your reputation and your talent, Ben. Well, I'm trying. You never know. You're never out of the woods, as an old guy told me when I was in the restaurant business. But I'm super thankful it's going the way it is right now. Yeah. Great to meet you. Nice meeting you. Have a good afternoon. Yeah, cheers. Y'all have a good day.
Advanced Pretend is a podcast produced by 9 Stories Creative Podcast Studios, created by Jenn, executive produced and edited by Matt Jackson. Find us wherever you get your podcasts.